Do you think Trump should have been removed from Twitter?
No.
What's the pro case? Can you? I'm having fun here.
Steelman.
Can you steelman each side?
Yeah. Let's steelman the get him off the platform. Here we have a guy who is virulent in all ways. He promotes confrontation. He lacks decorum. He incites the fervent believers of his cause to act up and push the boundaries, bordering on and potentially even including breaking the law. He does not observe the social norms of a society that keep us well functioning, including an orderly transition of power. If he is left in a moment where he feels trapped and cornered, he could behave in ways that will confuse the people that believe in him, to act in ways that they so regret that it could bring our democracy to an end, or create so much damage or create a wound that's so deep, it will take years of conflict and years of confrontation to heal it. We need to remove him, and we need to do it now. It's been too long. We've let it go on too long. The other side of the argument would be he was a duly elected person whose views have been run over for way too long. And he uses the ability to say extreme things in order to showcase how corrupt these systems have become and how insular these organizations are in protecting their own class. And so if you really want to prevent class warfare, and if you really want to keep the American dream alive for everybody, we need to show that the First Amendment, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, all of this infrastructure is actually bigger than any partisan view, no matter how bad it is, and that people will make their own decisions. And there are a lot of people that can see past the words he uses and focus on the substance of what he's trying to get across, and more generally agree than disagree. And so when you silence that voice, what you're effectively saying is this is a rigged game, and all of those things that we were told were not true are actually true.
If you were to look at the crude algorithms of Twitter, of course, I don't have any insider knowledge, but I could imagine that they saw let's say there's a metric that measures how negative the experience is of the platform. And they probably saw in several ways you could look at this, but the presence of Donald Trump on the platform was consistently increasing how shitty people are feeling, short-term and long-term, because they're probably yelling at each other, having worse and worse and worse experience. If you even do a survey of how do you feel about using this platform over the last week, they would say horrible relative to maybe a year ago when Donald Trump was not actively tweeting or so on. So here you're sitting at Twitter and saying, okay, I know everyone's talking about speech and all that kind of stuff, but I kind of want to build a platform where the users are happy and they're becoming more and more unhappy. How do I solve this happiness problem? Well, let's ban the sources of the unhappiness. Now, we can't just say you're a source of unhappiness, so we'll ban you. Let's wait until that source says something that we can claim breaks our rules, like incites violence or so on.
That would work if you could measure your construct of happiness properly. The problem is, I think what Twitter looked at were active commenters and got it confused for overall system happiness. Yes. Because for every piece of content that's created on the internet, of the 100 people that consume it, maybe 1 or 2 people comment on it. And so by over-amplifying that signal and assuming that it was the plurality of people, that's where they actually made a huge blunder. Because there was no scientific method, I think, to get to the answer of deplatforming him. And it did expose this idea that it's a bit of a rigged game and that there are these deep biases that some of these organizations have to opinions that are counter to theirs and to their orthodox view of the world.
So in general, you lean towards keeping, first of all, presidents on the platform, but also controversial voices
all the time. I think it's really important to keep them there.
Let me ask you a tricky one in the recent news that's become especially relevant for me. What do you think about, if you've been paying attention to Kanye West, a recent controversial outburst on social media about um, Jews, Black people, racism in general, slavery, Holocaust, all these topics that he touched on in different ways on different platforms, but including Twitter. What do you do with that? And like, what do you do with that from a platform perspective? And what do you do from a humanity perspective of how to add love to the world?
Let's should we take both sides of that?
Sure.
Option one is he is completely out of line, and option two is he's not. Just to simplify.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
So the path one is he's an incredibly important tastemaker in the world that defines the belief system for a lot of people. And there just is no room for any form of racism or bias or anti-Semitism in today's day and age, particularly by people whose words and comments will be amplified around the world. We've already paid a large price for that. And then the expectation of success is some amount of societal decorum that keeps moving the ball forward. The other side would say, life, I think, goes from harmony to disharmony to repair. And anybody who has gone through a very complicated divorce will tell you that in that moment, your life is extremely disharmonious and you are struggling to cope. And because he is famous, we are seeing a person really struggling in a moment that may need help. And we owe it to him, not for what he said, because that stuff isn't excusable, but we owe it to him to help him in a way, and particularly his friends. And if he has real friends, hopefully what they see is that. What I see on the outside looking in is a person that is clearly struggling.